Hi, today we're going to talk about rounding numbers. So I'm going to show you a number. This is the one we're going to be working with today. 3,461 and 509 thousandths. We're going to be rounding it to various places. You need to be careful that you're marking the correct place you're rounding it to. Sometimes it's tricky because you can see tens and tenths look very much alike. They're not the same place though. Tens is referring to the whole number. Ones, tens. It's referring to this place. Tenths, however, whenever you see a THS at the end, it's referring to the numbers after the decimal place. So the tenths would be referring to the 5, because remember, decimal places are tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. So you need to make sure you're marking the right place to round. The first one wants us to round it to the tens place, so they're wanting us to round it to the 6. So we're trying to make a decision. Is this number closer to 3,460 point nothing? I'm not going to bother writing point nothing. Is it closer to 3,460 or is it closer to 3,470? Notice we're trying to decide, do we keep the 6 or do we make it one higher? Which is it closest to? So when we look at it, you have to decide by looking at what comes next. What comes next is a 1. Now you probably remember hearing 5 or higher, round up. Well, 1 is not 5 or higher, it's less. Since it's less than 5, we're going to pick the lesser number. It would be closer to 3,460 because it is rounding down from 3,461 down to 3,460. Some people like to think of it this way. 61 is closer to 60 than 70. You can kind of glance at it. I think it's easier to just look at the next number. But whatever works for you is what counts because there's different ways to think about math. We're going to look at the tenths place next. And so rounding to the tenths, again, pointing out THS means after the decimal. So tenths place would be there. We're trying to decide, is it closer to 3,461.5, nothing, or is it closer to 3,461.6, making it higher? Do we keep it the same or do we make it higher? You can barely see that, can't you? All right, to decide we have to look at the next number. The next number is a 0. Remember, our rule is 5 or higher, we round up. 0 is not higher than 5. So we are not rounding up. We're keeping the original number. It's closer to the first one. 3,461.5. You can think of it this way. Is 0.50? Is 0.50? Is it closer to 0.50 or 0.60? Well, 0.50 is definitely closer to 0.50. 0.5. Let's look at the next one. Oh, I erased part of my 9. So our next one that we're going to look at is the hundreds place. So here's the decimal, ones, tens, hundreds. We're trying to decide, is it closer to 3,400 or is it closer to 3,500? Do we keep the 4 or do we make it bigger? Look at the next number. Remember our rule, 5 or higher, we round up. A 6 is higher than 5. It is more than halfway. So we're definitely going to round up. It's going to be this one, 3,500. So let's do our next one. Our next one says the hundredths place. Again, remember, THS is referring to the decimal. Here's the decimal, tenths, hundredths, right there. So we're trying to decide, do we keep it just like it is? 3,461.5, nothing. Remember, when we round, everything after that is zeros. We're just getting rid of it. Do we keep it like that or do we round up? So our option would be 3,461.51. Do we keep it the 0 or do we make it bigger to the 1? The way we tell is we look at the number next to it. That's a 9. That is definitely 5 or higher. So we're going to round up. We're going to take the bigger number. That is the bigger number. 3,461.51. The last one we're going to look at today talks about rounding to the whole number. Whole number tricks people. In my class, the most common mistake we have with rounding is to the nearest whole number. When it says whole number, it means not a decimal. So if I were to cover up that much, we have no decimal. See, there's the decimal. Anything after the decimal is a decimal number. Anything before the decimal is a whole number. So we're trying to decide what is the nearest whole number. Is it 3, 4, 6, 1, or 3, 4, 6, 2? The only way we can tell is to see what's behind the decimal, what's back here. It's a 5. Remember, 5 or higher means round up. 5 is the halfway mark, we round up. Since that is a 5, we are going to pick the higher number, 3, 4, 6, 2. Whoops, let me put this down here. So 3,462. Another way to think about it is when it says round to the nearest whole number, you're asking to be rounding to the nearest 1, to the ones place. I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 here. Ones place. So you can think of it either way. If whole number makes sense to you and you think, what would it be without the decimal? Go for it. Think of it that way. If that's confusing, just tell yourself whole number means round to the ones place. All right, make sure you're underlining the correct place so that you know where you're rounding to. Look at the next number to see whether you pick the higher number or whether you keep it at that number you had it. All right, I hope you do really well.